Welcome to Feminine Roadmap Podcast. I'm your host, Gina-R-Farrar. Each week, I bring you an inspiring conversation to help you navigate the challenges and changes of midlife so that you can not only survive, but thrive in your second half. Hello, Feminine Roadmappers. It is Gina here, and today we are going to be talking about the feminine mind. We're going to be talking about the idea that women have been told or trained culturally to behave in certain ways, following rules, and how that keeps us from being our most exceptional selves. My guest wants to help women fall back in love with being feminine and being female. My guest is Nancy-Michieli. She's the creator of Love to Be Me, a movement to revive women's feminine superpower to win in life and business. And she's a holistic life, career, and executive coach. Nancy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Gina. I'm so excited to be here.
So why don't you give us a bit of a backstory? What is it that led you to this mission and this message of really helping women reconnect with their feminine power?
So it's kind of a bit of an interesting, as you've said, I'm now a coach, but I have spent 25 years as an engineer in the oil and gas industry, and very, very male-dominated industry. And I was being super successful for a period in my life where I was running things known as turnarounds, which means it's like taking your car to the shop to get it for a big maintenance check, except we would do it with millions of dollars and 1,000 people working for us. And I was using a lot of feminine charm, but at that time, I didn't realize that's what I was using to help the guys perform better and make sure that my team and all the people around me were able to perform at the best of their abilities. And then one day I received some really, really negative feedback from a woman in our organization that really, really struck me. And I thought, oh my gosh, I cannot behave this way. And it struck me so much that I actually quit my job with this oil and gas company, and a job that I really, really liked because the criticism was so intense. And so I went to go work for another company, and I was the engineering manager for that company, and I put on my boss's hat. And I was truly driving all of the masculine norms, like really just driving things to completion. And I hated life. I was so unhappy. I was not able to get the people to work well for me. And I was like, what is it? If I can't be this friendly, fun, flirty, feminine charm, and I can't be this masculine, what is it? So I actually hired myself an emotional intelligence coach. And he's like, took me through it and helped me break this mold of this engineering masculine philosophy and said, no, it is really, really important for you to show up. And he didn't use the term feminine charm either, but with this behavior, this lightness, this energy, these different philosophies. And so then I started a role with another very, very large oil and gas company that's huge around the world. And I took this feminine charm and tried to apply it again. And within 18 months of working for this new company on contract with them, they offered me a full-time job where I could write my own salary because of the way I was able to present myself and show up to help lift up their team. And so then I was like, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to work in oil and gas anymore. I really, really would like to help motivate women, motivate young people to feel good. And so I then started going down this path of going, what is it that I do? What makes me successful in life and business? And that's where I really discovered I was utilizing feminine energy as this process and feminine charm, such as creativity, such as nurturing my team, allowing people to perform at their highest level. And by doing that, and by bringing that feminine part of me to work every day, I was able to be happier and to be more free. And so this has now said, you know what, your mission needs to be to help women feel that in their workplace, feel that and go, why is it that it stops us from utilizing that in this corporate world, in this masculine area of work?
You know, I can think back to my experience in the workforce. I worked in a predominantly female environment and still experienced a lot of that masculine behavior.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is where I say women are trained. We are conditioned that if you're going to go into the corporate world, that you need to almost be a little bit of this dog eat dog. And actually, I have personally found it more difficult to work with women than work with men, because we all have these conditionings like, oh no, you shouldn't behave this way, you shouldn't dress this way, you shouldn't talk this way, or those types of things, where I find the men less like that, but women, especially in the corporate world, really start to kind of, I don't want to say hate on each other, but can get really jealous and can get really catty in the world. And so for me, I want women to break that shell and let's get out of it and feel good being women, bringing those natural essences that make us the best. And it will help reduce our anxiety and stress, because there's a 2-to-1 ratio of women who suffer anxiety and stress more than men in the corporate world. And I believe it strongly is related to the fact that we don't get to be ourselves when we're at work.
I'm thinking about how we have to fight against ourselves in that situation, right? We're working so hard to not let a chink in the armor show, or not look weak, or not be misunderstood, and feeling like it's a man's world, right?
Exactly. So very, very true. And I'm now working with different women of different ages and different cultures. And over the last several days, I've been interviewing them as feedback, because I have a coach as well. I think as a coach, it's good to have a coach to help you kind of move to the next level. And my coach is like, I want you to interview different women and truly understand what things are coming from. And it's really interesting. As I interview a young woman who grew up in Egypt, whose parents said to her, still in this age, no, a man is supposed to work, a woman stays home, right? And she was like, no, I'm going to be an engineer. And then I have other women who are in their 70s who are like, I grew up in a very female dominated, and I was so insecure that if I said something, I was afraid that they were all going to like prevent me from lifting up. So I would keep quiet. And then I have another girlfriend who's of Jamaican descent, and she's like, I was the middle child. And so therefore in the Jamaican family, I didn't have that same priority that everybody gave to the oldest child and the youngest child. And so I had to fight for it. And so I feel like my job is to give so much, as opposed to being open to accept that I deserve to receive something back, right? So it's interesting how we all have different things from different experiences that show up in our life and prevent us from being the best version of ourselves.
You mentioned cultural, you mentioned familial, right?
Yes.
Different kinds of family dynamics.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of crossed messages even within the female community, what is quote unquote acceptable. This conversation about men versus women, I try to stay out of the, I will admit it is a man's world. I teach my girls that, but I also say, but that doesn't mean we can't be women in a man's world. We just need to be aware of how it functions. So where do you fall on that line? Because I really feel like women, we are sometimes our own worst enemies within our own community. Like the men don't even figure in half the time.
Right. And so because I have worked with so many men, my experience is typically men have helped promote me to be more successful. So I don't think men are the enemy, right? They have been trained to behave that way, just like we as women have been trained to behave the way we are behaving. But if we want men and even other women to respect us better, then we need to deal with our own stuff. And we need to work through that and start to uplift ourselves and each other before we can help bring the men along in understanding it. Because if we don't understand it, how do we expect all of the men to be able to respond, right? Like, they're just like, okay, what do I do now?
They're like deer in the headlights, right? They're like, I don't know. I don't want to get in trouble, right?
Exactly, right? And it's so true, right? Like, they're like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And it's interesting. I was looking at, and I won't say who this is, but there's somebody that I really respect and follow. And she's got herself caught up in this kind of storm of blame and shaming her. And she's like, I don't know what to, like, I don't know what's the right thing to say, right? And I think we all expect the other person just to know the right thing. But the reality is we need to deal with our own stuff and we need to kind of work through it. And this is where, as a coach, right, I help women kind of work through all of those mindsets. And I say that your mind is hijacking your success. Mm-hmm. Because we all have these internal shames, these internal dialogues that are going on with us that stop us from being that person that we want to be. And somehow our intuition is telling us, but as women, we have been trained not even to trust that. Being intuitive is truly one of the greatest skills that women have. And starting to listen to our gut, listen to our body as part of the work that we do is really important to move us forward.
I 150% agree with that. There is so much wisdom to knowing yourself. I think that, if we're totally going on just feeling and intuition alone, it could be dangerous. But there's a wisdom to taking in hard, fast facts, right? The things we can see and measure and, know. And then there's that knowing that we as women have. And I don't know about you, Nancy, but have you ever had that time when you thought something and you didn't follow through and later on you're like, I should have listened to myself?
Yes. Oh, so true. So many times where I'm like, oh, why didn't I trust myself just to go with that gut instinct, right? There is something that tells me. And I think that's kind of one of the things that I used to do in my engineering world quite a lot, was actually trust my gut instinct. I have a really good sense, and I think a lot of women do, that when you meet someone, they either feel right or don't feel right. And for some reason, I can pick somebody out to say that they're going to be good in this job, in this work field. They'll get along really well with the people, or you know what, they're better suited to something else. And I can look at a resume within seconds and know it. And I know that I've got other women around me and other men who are like, how did you call that so quickly? And I'm like, I don't know. There's just something in my gut. There's something in my intuition that I'm able to pick up on the energy, the vibrations that person has, the way they speak and present themselves, the way they hold themselves, and say, you know what, this is the role I would put them in, or this is the role that I would put them in. And often we put people in roles that, from a work business perspective, that don't align with who they are. And it's because there's some rule that says, oh, either I need to hire X number of women, or I need to hire people who can do this, so therefore they're really good in this area, let's promote them to a leadership role. And really, they just like to be this quiet, technical person who works away. But we've given them these rules that if you don't make it to the leadership level, you're not good enough. Right? And so we do this to people constantly all over the place. And so my mission of Love to Be Me is to help people find happiness and joy doing the things that they love to do. And that could be being a grandmother who loves to knit and make beautiful artwork, or somebody who's like loves to clean, which is something I absolutely hate, but is great at keeping things spotless and organized from that perspective, versus somebody like me who can stand in front of 1,000 men and say, this is what I want us to do. And they all excitedly go do that work, right? So we all have different perspectives as to who we are supposed to be. And when we are not living that, that is where I think we start to fall down.
You know, I really believe that there are women who have never heard this message really in their life, like in their environment, in their culture. And so this is very radical for some people. Yes,
it is. And when I talk about love to be me, I have 3 kind of categories. I want you to be fun, I want you to be flirty, and I want you to be fabulous. And I will tell you, I was on a big coaching call with a really, really successful businessman who owns a corporation. I said, I'm really trying to change the philosophy of flirty from this sexual innuendo to it being what it is. It means that you're light and playful and cheery, and that you can create great banter with people. But women struggle with being flirty, and especially with things like the Me Too movement. And I volunteer for the board of directors for a sexual assault survivor center, so I'm 100% aligned with what those organizations have to do. I also feel, though, that as women, and there's research out of UC Berkeley that shows that if we want to negotiate better, if we want to be able to be more successful, we need to add that feminine charm. And it's not just friendliness, it's that little bit of flirtiness. And even Madeleine Albright in 2012, I believe it was, responded to a journalist that if you don't apply your feminine charm, that was the only way she could negotiate for the US on some big worldwide stages, right? So as women, we really, really need to feel comfortable with being who we are. And I want a woman to walk into a room, and I don't care if she's just come out of the barn, shoveling, cleaning the stalls for the cows, versus she's dressed to the nines for a party. She walks into a room and she's so happy with her energy, who she is, that people just stop and go, the energy is just lifted because she's walked into the room and she feels so great being herself.
I love the paradigm that it's not the quote appearance. We're talking about who we are on the inside, the way that we think, the way that we frame our perspective on ourselves and our place in the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it's so important that it's not about looks, because you can take some heavier set women, right, who can show up and be so powerful and so impressive. And it is not about how they look. It is about how they hold themselves, how they resonate inside with themselves. And to do that, we have to get rid of a lot of the junk stories that we have going on in our brain, a lot of the negative language, these things that make us smaller and prevent us from being amazing.
I would say that in my experience as a coach, when I walk through the journey with people initially, I get them to talk and I just record what they say. It seems like a very simple task, but I find that most people will reveal their story very soon. Either something someone in their family has defined them as, something they believe about themselves. They begin to say things. And my experience, and Nancy, maybe you've had the same, is when you reflect that story back to them in writing. Like, I'm not telling you you said this. I just wrote it down and sent you an email. Every single time women are like, where did you get this? And I'm you said it. And they're like, what? And I think that my point is that we all have a tape playing and we're not even fully aware. So there's this awareness piece that without that, there is no change, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So true. And so one of the techniques I use as a coach is I'm a rapid transformational therapy practitioner as well, which means I use hypnosis. And I love this process because in 90 minutes, it's amazing how I can help rewire women's brains. And the advantage of hypnosis is that I can take people back to moments in their life that they don't even necessarily remember, about something has happened or something was said to them. And all of a sudden, these little stories that have happened when they were like little children, right? And they're like, wow, I had completely forgot about that. But there's like some inkling that you're like, yep, that did happen to me. And I have them look at it through what I call their 2020 vision of their adult eyes, now looking at that childhood story. And they're like, yeah, that doesn't make sense anymore. So then I'll be like, okay, let's get rid of that story. Let's rewrite that story in your brain. And then I rewire them with this incredible vision of what their future would be. And we get it at an emotional level, because if you want the change to happen, you can't just say words over and over again or look at a board where you've got your pictures on saying, yep, this is my vision board. You have to emotionalize everything and get it to be so real in the moment that you're thinking about and feeling it, that you can actually rewire your mind and your body in the process. And so I love doing that in hypnosis and then sharing with people the journey that they've gone through. I worked with a woman who was struggling with intimacy with her husband, and they had actually divorced and come back together again. And she's like, I'm still struggling with intimacy. And if it wasn't that I drank a little bit of alcohol to make me feel frisky, it wouldn't work really well for us. And so we actually went back, and there was a time in her childhood where she had said some naughty, inappropriate words. And she was punished for that because it was inappropriate for her to say as a child. But when we looked at that and said, does that story still stay true? She's like, oh my gosh, that's silly. Why am I still harboring those ideas of me saying inappropriate language, which as a child may have been inappropriate, but as an adult isn't inappropriate, right? To have with your husband or spouse. So we release that. And she's like, oh my gosh, my husband is happier because I am happier, right? Because I now allow myself that freedom to say what it is that I want to say. And it doesn't matter if it's intimacy or business or different things. We have caged ourselves like birds to stop saying what we actually want to say. And so I help people release that so that they can still say it in a kind and graceful way, but they now actually let it out, right? And say the words that they want to say. And I don't want to wait till people get to their deathbed and do those things. Like, the biggest regret of my life is I didn't live true to myself. I lived to somebody's expectations, right? Like, that is the biggest regret, as by a study of a palliative care nurse out of Australia, when she evaluated people on their deathbed. What do they say? I wish I had lived the life that I was designed to live, not the expectation of others.
I wonder, though, Nancy, if the stories are so strong that people have lost sight or maybe have never connected to the life that they want to live.
And I think that's true. I really, really do. I think at certain points in our life, we are so trained. And I really do believe this is a training that we have that has happened to us from culture, from family, from teachers, from religion, from any different source, right? But these are trainings that have happened, that have brainwashed us into being who we currently are. So unless you take time to sit down with a coach, and unless you realize that I am so uncomfortable and suffering so much with anxiety or stress that I don't even realize that I am not living my true life. And that's where you do need to reach out. And that's why I think there's now so many more coaches in the world, right? They're helping people connect, because I think we also have stigmas about, I don't want to go to a psychologist for help, right? Because therefore I'm broken.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you would never say, I'm not going to a heart doctor because I have a heart attack. But from a mental health perspective, there's such stigma around the negativity of going there. And so I inspire people to go find yourself a coach that you feel comfortable with. And there's lots of us out there. Find the one that you resonate with, that you're like, okay, you know what? She or he does it for me and is going to help me to where I want to be, to help discover who I truly am.
It's really fascinating how our minds work and how the subconscious is driving the bus. You know,
Yes.
we feel like we know what we're doing. And I think there are seasons in life, Nancy, where maybe we are not 100% living in alignment, but we are doing things that bring us joy and that bring us a level of satisfaction. And then there are turns in the road. And at some point we look up and realize, wait a minute, how did I get over here? Right? I think that happens to a lot of people. It's not like you've lived the wrong life or, you know, you're bad or wrong. I want people to hear that this is just a process of stepping back and maybe looking at your life and saying, what's working for me now? Maybe this worked 10 years ago. Maybe it didn't, but where am I now? And what needs to shift and how can I shift it? And I think to your point, getting help is really the fastest way to get through, because we have our own voices we're trying to battle through. Somebody else can kind of wade through the voices and pluck up the things that are popping up and really help us to get through it.
Right. And help us become clear as to what it is that we want in the next stage of our lives, right? And as your audience is in that middle age, right, that's where we start to look and go, okay, how do I want to spend the next half of my life, right? I was very happy as a young engineer thinking, yep, this is where I'm going to be. But then as I got older, I was like, do I really want to be the CEO of a corporation? No, I've worked my way up the ladder. It just gets more dog eat dog as you move up. What is it that I can do? And I'll be honest with you, the kind of transition that said it's time to go do coaching was writing my mother's obituary. And so there's lots of things about you should write your own obituary, but I've written kind of my own obituary and it doesn't always get me to where I'm going. But by writing my mother's obituary, and my mother was like, it was really interesting to go back and look at her life and look at my mom and dad's life. My parents, my mom was born in England. My dad was born in the Netherlands. They met in Canada and they owned a nursery, a flower, and we grew flowers. We had a big set of greenhouses and grew flowers. And it was my dad's passion. Now, my mom really, we used to joke, couldn't tell the difference between a dandelion and a tulip, but she loved to sell. And so she was a really, really good salesperson for the business. So their combination worked well. But what really inspired my mom was she had spent so much time in the Girl Guide or Girl Scout movement, as you call it in the US. We call it Girl Guides. And she was a Brownie leader from the time she was a child, took kids all over the world traveling. And she loved to help women, young girls, uplift themselves and become really, really strong, capable, have fun, and those types of things. And I used to actually think that was because my mom did it with the littler kids, and that's where she liked it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's weaker. That's not strong enough, right? Like, that's not going to get me into engineering and be successful in a corporation. But as I look back, I'm like, this is what she loved to do. My mother showed up every day living who she was. She was not the mom who cooked meals and did laundry and cleaned the house. That was not my mom, but she was this amazing woman who loved to help people. And she had this gift to get people to do things, and they thought it was like absolutely awesome to do. And we'd all just sit back and look at her going, how is that possible? She wouldn't, but people love to do stuff for my mom, and she loved to help women feel really strong in their capability. And going back and looking at it, I'm like, oh, that's where I'm getting some of that from, that energy.
That's an incredible legacy. I think it's more common for young women to get the message of you have to dress a certain way, you have to walk a certain way, you have to do a certain thing. And some people are just naturally less inclined to do what everyone tells them they should do.
Right.
You've got those rogue ones that are just like, I'm not doing that. That's not where I want to go with my life. But if you're a woman who is like most women, and there's a fear of being misunderstood or offending someone or all of those things that we've been taught not to do, how do you help them navigate, Nancy, the process of that discomfort actually becoming normal and good?
Right. So this becomes the fun for me, actually, is helping people through this discomfort. So as I said earlier, I use rapid transformational therapy. The reason I love that is because people can sit in a very relaxed space and develop the new familiar, because it's actually uncomfortable. Even if something's horrible in our lives, it's more comfortable to stay in that negative space than to move in the positive space, which sounds really weird, but it is. So by using hypnosis, I can actually get people to put the headphones on, sit in a comfy chair, and experience the positive in such a fun and easy and effortless way. And because I have them redo that over and over and over in their mind, they actually start to live it. It starts to experience in their body. And what's interesting, and I find very fascinating, is that other people will notice the change in them, even though they don't realize they've changed, because it's such this weird, subtle change without the discomfort. Once I've gone through that, then the next part of the process that I do is I actually do training on what the new habits should be. So I teach people how to have more fun, how to stand really well when they walk into a room with their energy, how to have like a casual conversation. And I also kind of teach them, and women work on a 28-day physical cycle, right? We all know our cycle is 28 days. And in those first 14 days, we have much more energy. We're much more magnetic by the time we get to the time of ovulation. And then as we get closer to our period starting, right, our energy drops and we close. And we need to accept that that's acceptable for us to not always be up. And so I help women try and discover when their high energy times are, when they are lighter and more joyous, that they can show what it is that they want, and when they just need to accept that, you know what, I'm going to relax, I'm going to take time for myself, I may go in and do more meditation. If that's the case, I'm not going to get up and do big, massive presentations when I just feel like crap, right? Like, we need to recognize these things in our body. So I help work with women and I train them literally through these different changes. And we take several months to do that. So I don't go in and say, okay, in X number of weeks, you're going to magically do all of these things, right? Let's get rid of the negative thoughts. Let's then start to apply new training and behavior where you can actually train. And I coach each woman through some of the different situations, because not only do I need to coach them about how to be their new person, I need to coach them on how others are going to react to them. Because if they've been someone who's a negative Nelly, and all of a sudden they're now starting to come off positively, right? People are going to be a little standbackish with them, going, okay, what has just happened here, right? And so we need to realize that people around you, your circle, need to be aware of these changes, and it will take them sometimes longer to realize the impact than it will you. And then the thing that I do finally, and I think this is the most powerful bit of my program, is I bring women together in what I call a village. And they say it takes a village to raise a child. I think as women, when I bring women together in a village where they mastermind together, they learn the process of giving each other positive energy and positive feedback to help them with the situation or area that they're struggling a bit with. And by doing that, they can now relay that to their mothers, their daughters, their children, their coworkers. They've learned the language to communicate to other women to help lift that up. And I think in the end, that is why I call it the Love to Be Me movement, because I'm only one person. And so the women I teach need to be able to go out and spread it, because there's 7.8 billion people on the planet, and I can be on all the YouTube videos and everything, but unless each woman teaches that to their sons, teaches it to their husbands, right? This is how women should behave, and this is how we're going to work with you as well, right? So they need to be able to share that, and they need to have the confidence to walk into a room and show that energy and show that presence.
That's a really good point, that there's also a retraining or a coaching of the men to know how to relate with a woman, because I think there is a lot of confusion for them.
Yes.
I don't know that all men are on board with women should be passive. I mean, there are definitely men who are, but yes. I think there's a lot of men who, I was just talking to my daughter this morning about dynamics of personality and how it's important that we stand our ground as women and that we set healthy boundaries as women. If somebody's crossing a boundary, being disrespectful, trying to find a way to step in and kind of control an area of you, it's okay as a woman to set a boundary. That's how I've raised my girls. What's interesting is there are men who find that terribly attractive.
Yes.
And then there's the other men that are like real put off by it because they are broken and aren't able to be in relationship with a healthy woman. And so I think as we talk about something that we do, which is helping women step into their power and to find their voice and to know what a healthy boundary is and to live a fuller life, there is an aspect to when we grow, there's a cost. We will gain and lose people in that process. But the greater focus is we gain ourselves, those other things will work themselves out, and it's okay. I mean, I feel like that's an important thing to point out, that some people will get it, some people won't, but as long as you are staying the path and it feels aligned and right for you, trust it.
And I agree with that wholehearted, because people are in our lives for certain reasons, right? And we attract certain people to our lives. And as we change, we will start to find better people, I think, to attract to our lives. And sometimes, you know what, that may be saying to our mother, you know what, I am going to limit the amount of time I'm with you because you bring this negative source of energy. And we can't eliminate sometimes our family from our lives, but we can manage the amount of time so that they don't bring us back down. And if people are not in our lives in the future, it doesn't mean that they didn't have a purpose at that time. But as we grow, we will attract the right people who are here to help us grow, who will align with who we are. And when we get to surround, you'll just find your life gets better and better. But I really, really think that it's really important that as women, as we learn to do this, and as women who are mothers, now I don't have any children, but I do have 2 nephews. And it's that we teach our sons how women should be treated, how they should be respected. Because as women, we don't take enough power in that ability to teach and set them as the role models that we want to be. And I was having a really interesting discussion with another podcast, and she was talking about Italian women and how they were complaining that their sons treat them badly. And she's like, okay, but you had the opportunity to set the expectations. So maybe you need to go back and go, you know what, as my son, as this boy who's going to grow up and marry another woman, I want to teach you right? We have that power, and we've kind of given it up. We've not taken advantage of that opportunity that we have as we raise the men in the world who become those corporate leaders, who become the husbands and the uncles and the brothers, and teach them as part of their youth and their growing to be the most incredible men that they can be, who work really well with women. My grandmother had this lovely saying, and I absolutely love it. She says, it takes manners to make a man, and then I added grace to make a woman. Because I think when you have men with really good manners and women who have that grace inside themselves, the combination of what we could do as a world and a universe is really quite incredible.
And I love the idea that we're not enemies, that there is a symbiosis that's natural there, and we just need to work toward it together, right? And as women, maybe the reason we don't trust men is because of the kind of men we've been attracted to. You know,
Yes.
Not all men are the same, and really understanding that power does not mean controlling a man, right? We're not talking power in dominance.
Right.
We're talking power in mindset and in just control of your own world. Do you want to speak into that a little bit?
So, and I think that's really true. Because I've worked my entire life with so many men, I generally have found them to be very, very great to me. And yes, there's the odd guy that I've come across, okay, who I'm like, okay, you're just a bonehead, and I'm going to put you over in this space and not let you own the space that you want to. But most men that I find really do want to do the right thing and really do want to work with women. And I think sometimes that you get really, really nice men who end up with wives who are so controlling and fearful, right? That they can't do anything right, no matter what they try. And they're really, really generally nice men. And then you get the other way around, where you have super, super nice women who have some controlling men. And we need to look at ourselves and go, what is it that we do? I joke with my husband that I have saved him from his bad choices in women, because he's been married before, and he's had women who, my husband's Italian, he's naturally flirtatious, right? It comes with the Italian nature. And we both ballroom dance. And so because he loves to dance, and he's a man who loves to dance, women are always like, can I have permission to dance with your husband? And I'm like, sure, like, take it. Like, he's got so much energy, he gladly will dance for days on end. And it uplifts the women that he's with. They feel really, really good. But there's no jealousy between me and my husband about that, because I know at the end of the evening, he's going to come home with me because he's happy, because I show up as the best version of myself. And that's what he's attracted to, right? Is not what my size is or how I dress, but he's attracted to the fact that I have found how to love myself. I have found how to have that feminine energy while still trying to manage a job and have been an engineer and leading big organizations of men. He is like, yeah, this is what a great relationship should be like. And when people see us dance together, they're like, oh, I really, really want that harmony. How come there aren't men out there like that? But the reality is, my husband was one of those men in a bad marriage, right? And she was super jealous of him. And it's kind of like, no, you need to let him be free and be himself, just like I need to be free and be myself. And then together we work really, really well.
I feel like it does tend to be opposites attract, though, right? You've got those other things happening. You've got the quieter attracted, the more extroverted or whatever. And I think that inner confidence that you're talking about, finding that feminine energy and being the fullest version of yourself, is empowering. Is it?
It is. It's very empowering when you start to trust yourself. When you start to feel good about who you are, and where you feel good enough that your voice is able to be clear and elegant in words and kind, as well as being able to balance your masculine energy of needing to get stuff done when you need to get stuff done, right? There needs to be a balance. We can't be all feminine or all masculine. But generally what I find is women who are not secure in themselves either sit in two camps. One is they sit in what is known as the wounded feminine, where they are playing the victim a lot of the time, or they sit in the masculine camp of being driving and disciplined and energetic. And what we need to do is move women back to the balance of where they've got the confidence, which comes from kind of that masculine standpoint, but they have this trust, this creativity, their ability to connect with their intuition, their emotions, and be really good with that and enjoy that and move from, oh, poor me, I need to be looked after, I need to be helped, from that victim standpoint and up into the positive feminine energies that we all have, that you're born with from the moment you come out of the uterus. It doesn't matter if you're man or woman, you have you have female energy and you have male energy. And it's that combination of learning how to use it. The problem is we as women have been trained to either quiet down our feminine energy or be more masculine. And I'm trying to encourage women to take ownership of that feminine energy, because it raises your energy, it raises your confidence. And like I said, I want a woman to walk into a room with her head held high and this energy that is so exciting from her that it doesn't matter if she said anything. People just know that she brings that energy into a room. And I'm sure you have experienced this, where you walk into a room and you feel that negative energy and you're like, ooh, something is off here, right? Like you don't even know if something's said or something, but they're just, everybody's energy seems to be down. And what I want is the women to go in and lift that energy up and be that light, be that, just because they have so much love for themselves. And that's why I called it Love to Be Me, because I want them to have that love for themselves. I want every woman to say, I love to be me.
Do you find that it makes women a little nervous or scared to trust their intuition and to be more feminine, especially the more aggressive females, the women who've run the masculine for so long?
Yes. And I would tell you, when I started to learn this, 100%, because I'm like the A type. It's why I ended up in very, very male dominated, like a farm girl who could keep up with the boys, both physically and mentally. But I realized I wasn't truly happy. And so by having a coach, right, I helped relearn how to ignite with those feelings, that ability to cry, right? Like we don't let women cry at work, right? Like it's like, oh, no, don't do that. That's inappropriate, right? Like we tell, even though something could be really, really sad, and we need to learn to trust that. And so it is a practice, right? We need to get over the negative beliefs and mindset, and then we need to practice it. And we need to practice it, and we need to encourage and support other women and even men to do that. I remember having a time where I had two of my staff had family members who passed away within a week. I had another one who had a serious injury. Like it was just like 4 people having horrible stuff. And when the fourth one came in, I'm like, I don't know that I can emotionally take having my staff going through this, right? Like it really, really affected me. And in many masculine organizations, right, we're like, no, be strong. Don't show that emotion. But I think when you do, you connect so much better. And in the world of negotiation, if women come off too strong, they are not likable from a male or a female perspective. And so if we spend too much time in that masculine, we actually aren't successful in being able to get the stuff done that we want to do. We aren't able to negotiate really, really well. We actually need to negotiate more from that feminine perspective of having a bit of that feminine charm in it and seen as nice because and seen as feminine to actually be successful. And research has proven this multiple times, that if we show up as just strong and very masculine, we are seen very negatively. It does not fit really, really well in the culture and the business. And even just think about it. If you had to interact with a woman, do you find it comfortable when she is so strong and like, nope, I'm going to do this, and we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and there's no tolerance for give?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to work with people that way, right? And as women, we see men do it, and in some cases, we think it's really, really good. And in other cases, depending on the man, we're like, that's not, I don't want to work with him or for him, right? So as women, it is really, really important, even if we're that strong A-type personality. And it's taken me quite a while to get my head wrapped around these things. But as soon as I did, oh my gosh, it's freeing. It's just like, I feel so much secure in myself. I feel freer, happier, and I'm so much more successful. It's amazing how much more I can engage both men and women to do when I come from that place of using femininity.
I hear you saying that there's a lot of trust in the process.
Yes.
It's a leaning into something that might feel counterintuitive, or it might feel risky. Because if you're someone who's either controlled by passivity, because you can control people with being passive, just like you can control someone by being aggressive. And if that's how we have protected ourselves, if you will, you know, there's a faith walk involved here, that you can in fact have maybe not control in the sense of like dominant control, but you can actually have a more controlled environment when you yourself aren't constantly jockeying for position by being ultra passive aggressive, or just straight out, you know, acting like a man.
Yes. Very, very true. And it is uncomfortable, right? Like that change is uncomfortable and risky. I was talking to, in these interviews that I was doing with a woman the other day, she was like very, very afraid in her career to be herself, because she was like, I'm going to get rejected. I'm going to get a lot of negative feedback from, mainly in her case, it was women. She was like, okay, I'm not sure I'm comfortable doing this. And that's kind of why I say, as I work to help change your mindset, right, we need to talk about how the people around you are going to react. And that's why I don't believe it's a good idea just to do like a single session where somebody's like, okay, I can do rapid transformational therapy. I can help you overcome these breakdowns. But now you got to walk into a room and everybody else will have experienced you one way. And now I want you to behave another way. And that is really, really uncomfortable, not just for you, but for them. Because they're like, do I trust this? Do I believe this? All of the people around, okay, I hear her saying these things, but okay, how long is this going to last for? Right? And so you need to realize that it's a process. It is a process going from start to finish. But when you get there, oh my gosh, it is really freeing. And the results that you can accomplish, like when I use feminine energy in my first example, when you asked me how I got here, I actually saved a company $10 million in 1 year because of using feminine energy to engage and encourage the people who are working for me. And I had 1,000 men, and I would walk down the street years later, and people would stop me and say that was the most enjoyable time of their life in working in the oil and gas industry. And so I know for a fact that when I use that feminine energy, when I do it, people really, really respond. But it does kind of take a bit to get other people kind of on side when you go through that process, because they're like, okay, feels really uncomfortable. I'm not sure that I want to do it. But once you do, oh my gosh, it is great. It really is like great.
So if you were to kind of land the plane and really give people 3 actionable things, if you were to sit in front of one of the women in my tribe and say, okay, here's 3 actionable things you can do to begin that shift, whether it's the mental shift, the physical shift. What would you say to them?
So the first thing I would do is I would say to them, what is the language in your brain that's hijacking your success? And have them sit and spend some time going through what are the stories or beliefs that they have been told by either their family, their culture, that have stopped them from being the best. And I do it with people going, what has held you back by showing up with your greatness? And just get a pen out and write what comes up. And I highly recommend people do this in handwriting than sitting at a computer, because there's studies that also show that if you do it from a handwriting perspective, you will connect with it better. Then I would say to that person, the next thing I want you to do is write down, if you could live your life the way you wanted to live it as the person you wanted to be, I want you to take some time and I want you to write that out to be the most beautiful story that you can imagine. And I want you to put feeling words into it. I want you to put descriptive words into it. I want you to create a picture. And then I want you to record that and play it to yourself on a daily basis for at least 60 to 90 days. Because the belief that you can actually change habits in 21 days has been proven wrong time and time again. So you want to do it. And as you listen to it, you got to feel it and experience it. And then the other thing I would say is start to support every woman that you can who's starting to use more feminine energy from the positive, creative, intuitive, nurturing space, and help uplift them. So if you could walk away, help other women feel safe to be that person.
I love that, because there is a reality to partnership and community that really is so important in the process, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yes.
Nancy, I want to thank you so much for sharing such an empowering and enlightening message today, in just really encouraging women that being a woman is a beautiful and powerful and wonderful thing. And there's nothing to hide, that it is something we can enhance and enjoy. And the world is a better place when we show up that way. So thank you so much for framing it in such a good, non-combative way. It's not us versus them, right? You know?
Exactly.
Thank you so, so much.
Thank you very, very much, Gina, for having me part of your podcast. I am so grateful for this opportunity. And I just want women to feel great and love to be themselves and help other women do the same thing.
That's a wonderful, wonderful message. Today, my friends, you've been listening to Nancy-Michieli. She's the creator of Love to Be Me, a movement to revive women's feminine superpower to win in life and business. She's a holistic life, career, and executive coach. And if you head over to www.feminineroadmap.com/episode 190, I will have links for you to connect with Nancy. If you find that she resonates with you, click that link and connect with her. While you're there, please leave your name and email address. I have a gift for you. I would love to have you be a part of my tribe. I send out periodic encouraging emails. Ladies, we have been given such a gift being women. You have been created fearfully, wonderfully, beautifully. And the closer we walk to that divine expression of femininity that's within us, the more beautiful the world around us is. Don't be afraid of being the full woman that you're designed to be. It doesn't happen overnight. If you're on your journey there, keep it going. If you feel that nudge in your spirit, get the support and the resources you need to move toward that more feminine, powerful place where you are able to really unleash the fullness of who you are and the fullness of the life that you dream of living. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today. Please feel free to reach out to us. Let us know how this impacted your life. We look forward to talking with you all again next week. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.